Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Russ and Mike here, still under prohibition.
Yeah. Episode number 13, huh? Oh, is this going to be the one that breaks us? Unlucky 13? I don't know.
Could be. Not feeling too lucky with the way things are going, except that
You're feeling unlucky on the outside, yeah.
Yeah, but when you can't go out and have fun, you can stay home and listen to good music.
Yeah, basically all the restaurants in Japan close at 8, and now they are absolutely forbidden to serve alcohol. You can still buy alcohol in the liquor shops, but, you know, it's more fun to go out and drink with your friends. As a result of that, a lot of people have taken to drinking in the parks, which is not terribly, not a really nice sight. Well, what did you expect, though? I mean, you know, really, I don't think this is a really good idea.
My band had a gig lined up at a new place that looked really fun to play. That was supposed to happen, you know, this past week, but of course, that's indefinitely postponed. No really good live music, and nobody wants to come out and see live music if they can't have a drink.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I bought some new recording equipment and
or wear a mask. Yeah, just one thing. Last summer, I remember when this coronavirus was really at its, well, I guess it's at its peak now. But, you know, only half of the people around here were wearing masks. And Japan is pretty much a mask-wearing country. When they get sick, they wear masks. It's very different than the West. But this year, now I notice everybody's wearing masks all the time. Whenever I see them out in public, it's
when they're riding in their car alone with the windows up, when they're jogging in the countryside.
Now, you need to understand, there's no sort of law that says they have to wear a mask. There hasn't been any pressure like there has in America. They just kind of are all doing it now because the numbers are going up. But, you know, here we are.
At least we're safe with our pop filters.
Right. And recording equipment. What do you got going on there?
My sibilances and plosives will not spread any infection to you, Mike.
No, yeah, I'm pretty far away anyway, so I don't think that'll happen. Yeah.
Probably not this week.
Yeah. So you said you bought some new recording equipment? I didn't want to interrupt that amazing
as we recorded several episodes on my old Korg mixer, which dates back from 2007, and I've used it for lots of live gigs and other things. It's easy to do a podcast on it, too. The old Korg D888, which the aging old spinning hard disk I updated with solid-state drive. And I found a company in California, the only one I think out there that makes a bus that converts old to new. And I thought I was in business, but after recording some music in a band and losing some data, and then we lost some precious podcasting content.
We did. We had to redo part of last week's podcast.
And I found out that, you know, there's something wrong. It seems like after stopping and starting a recording, something goes wrong with the edition and the files get corrupted. And you know what? As much as I like to keep things going, I get attached to old gear and things that I have. You know, I have a lot of old music gear that I think will outlast me. But sometimes you got to pull the plug when you start to lose that content. So we've got a new Zoom 8-track recorder that I'm just itching to test out. And we'll be using that for the podcast and for some band gigs too. And we've got new mics, and boy, I think I bought like 4 microphones this year, and we're just all ready to do musical things. So maybe in that sense, being shut in a bit has been helpful in the productivity in music content creation. But,
no, it's been helpful in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's been helpful in a lot of surprising ways, really. I think both of our lives have changed quite a bit for the better this year.
In some good ways, yes.
Yeah.
Get to stay away from
socially, we can't really do much, but
yeah, we get to stay away from the people we don't want to see anyway. So,
which is pretty much almost everybody.
Pretty much, except our audience.
Except our audience. We'll hang out with you.
I have a few nice things to report this week. One will be coming much later in the broadcast. But first up, last week we reviewed the fabulous recording called To Be Frank by the German guitarist Frank Wingold. And, well, when I had looked at his YouTube page and his teaser for the CD, and I thought, I'll include that in our notes for our listeners. And I left a comment there saying that we discussed his album. And he sent a nice email to us, saying that, he was happy that we discussed his album, and he was very complimentary to us, which, I thought, well, I was really, really impressed that he did it. He actually listened to what we said, and so if you haven't yet listened to that CD, or recording, rather, buy the CD, but at least check it out.
Actually, I think that's a download only, isn't it?
I don't know. He mentioned CD, so it must be.
Oh, he mentioned a CD? It must be a Bandcamp or something.
I'm sure it'll be available. But, I mean, especially with guitar, there's so many great technical players out there who can, impress you with kind of, speeds and all sorts of things. But a lot of them aren't really doing much musically. But Frank's playing is really on both fronts of technical innovation, especially what he's doing with the 7-string and the multiple parts, incorporating piano type techniques, and then doing some really interesting, musical kind of things. It's really wonderful, and I hope he gets a lot more exposure. So any of our listeners, please go back to the last episode. You can find the links there and check out his CD. And thank you, Frank. If you listen to this podcast too, we're going to check out what you do in the future, and sometime why don't you come on, and we'd like to have an interview and hear about
let's talk to you. I want to know how you did
how
that.
You got these ideas for extra strings and new ways of playing.
Yeah, thank you, Frank Wingold, for your response.
That was great.
Okay.
And this week,
so what do we got this week?
We have to cover a huge historical frame. We have to go way back to not the beginnings, but as far as what we know about music, we're going to go back pretty far.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to before Johann Sebastian Bach, which is when we were young. That was really where your classical music education started. It was Bach, and then you learned all the classical, the romantic, the modernist, and it pretty much stopped there. Contemporary composers didn't count back in those days.
No, they were too scary.
Yeah, they're too scary.
Anything before that wasn't codified enough to be explainable.
Yeah,
so we're going to start there with classical, and we're going to go up to some cutting, bleeding edge new releases in jazz, and this week is a sax feature. It's all sax work, so let's get the ball rolling.
All right, well, let's go. Okay, so before Bach, before the Baroque era, really before Monteverdi, who also was kind of recent, there was the Renaissance era, and most of the music we have surviving from that era would be church music. Before these days, well, I don't know about these days, but basically in the I guess the classical and romantic era, the biggest challenge a composer faced was to write an opera, and before the Baroque era, it would have been to write a mass. All right, the mass was the big setting that you would make, and so we have a lot of music for the church, and there's some secular music too from that era, which is very long. I think it lasted like 200 years, the Renaissance era. Anyway, and also being that this is our 13th episode, we figured we needed the church's help there, in the form of religious music. So we're going for the music of Josquin de Prez, who is known as Josquin, not as de Prez. So you want to call him Josquin, okay? If you're talking to your friends, you want to seem like you're in the know. All right, Josquin was, if you think about Bach, the greatest Baroque era composer of the Baroque era, if not of all time, Josquin was the greatest composer of the Renaissance. All right, and so he and every other Renaissance composer pretty much said as much. So he's someone worth knowing about. And this year happens to be the 500th anniversary of his death. So this is another anniversary. Yeah, this is really one of the reasons why I picked this one. but it's well worth talking about. The album is called The Golden Renaissance, and it's performed by Stile Antico. Now, I know Stile Antico because over the last, almost 10 years, they've released 3 albums of religious Christmas music from the Renaissance era. Okay, now, what I mean by Christmas music isn't like carols or anything. It's church settings of polyphony that would have been sung at masses back in the Renaissance era.
There's no Frosty the Snowman.
Yes, Frosty doesn't make an appearance there. In fact, I think... Actually, some of your favorite Silent Night isn't there either. Well, that's because that was the 19th century. Franz Gruber wrote that one. Those are pretty recent. Those songs, yeah, but and they're very good. I mean, they
I have that one. It's kind of Christmas-ish kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not though. It just sounds like Renaissance church music, except that it's got
religious music.
It's got texts about Jesus' birth, basically.
That's what it's about.
All right. Yeah. Well, anyway. Yeah, okay, so Josquin died on August 15th, 1521, so we're not quite at his 500th anniversary yet. It's coming up pretty soon. Okay, to the sadness and mourning of musicians everywhere in Europe, as you will hear if you listen to the end of this album. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, this is, so the Golden Renaissance on Decca Records is a very long and generous program, 1 hour and 23 minutes, so they're going over the traditional CD length of 80 minutes. They fit all this on one CD. I have the CD, so here it is right here for Russ to see. Okay,
it looks supersized.
It's just a normal.
Do you have to squeeze that in the drawer to make it play?
I'm amazed that my old CD player plays it all. I guess they kind of, I don't know, it knows where to read this. I don't know how they do that.
Nanorobots.
Yeah, they can go up to around 1 hour and 25 minutes now. Okay, now, one of the things to know, let me give you a little history of Josquin first. Josquin was the greatest composer of his era, and he wrote these just luxurious, polyphonic works, okay? And, of course, other composers started sort of imitating him, copying him, or being influenced by him, and pretty much all church music from this era took on a little bit of the Josquin's style. Now, this became a problem because the luxuriousness of this music, the layering, covered up the words, and the church was not happy about that. And there was a big movement to just ban all music from the church because it was making people happy, and you can't be happy in church. So they so there's a big movement there, and the reason we still have music in church, by the way, if you like music, to hear music every week when you're in church and you happen to be a Catholic, you can thank Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, who came to the rescue by sort of writing polyphonic works in which you could understand the words. He rather cleverly organized all the voices so that any new consonant on a new word would just pop out of the texture, like he would kind of like have it so that it would just appear so that you knew what part of the text was being sung. Now, with Josquin, generally speaking, you can't tell where you are after a while in the text unless you're following very, very closely. But oddly enough, that is not an issue with this recording. This is a pretty amazing feat of engineering and just vocal placement or microphone placement, because the voices are very clearly audible. I think it's also the ensemble is fairly small as well, so I think you can hear the voices fairly clearly. And in fact, right from the first track, which is a Salve Regina, Welcome Queen, referring to Mary, okay, right away we hear these beautiful tapestry of sound. All the voices and all the lines are very audible, and I think what has happened here is the singers were placed a certain distance from the microphone. Like sopranos were a little further away because they tend to really kind of pin the meters. If you're a recording engineer, which I've done this, soprano voices, the very high women's voice, are very hard to record. They tend to distort very easily.
It's a good balanced recording, and it's recorded. I looked it up because I was impressed with the clarity.
Yeah,
of the
it was
sounds,
amazing.
But also the spatial characteristics. So it's the recording venue is All Hallows Gospel Oak, London. And you can hear the great church acoustics, but at the same time, the sort of enunciation and balance doesn't get lost in those, in sort of the reverberation of the hall sound. So they've achieved both here with clarity and also ambiance. So nice engineering to capture both sides of the recording in that.
Yeah, and considering what I've told you about this composer, who's really recording for the sound more than the words, who's composing for the sound more than the words, this is quite an achievement. I mean, they've really kind of done something really special here as far as engineering
if you look at the text,
goes.
You can follow it along with no major difficulties.
Right. And part of that has to do with the works themselves, but we'll get to that too. The second track is the plain chant Pange Lingua, which is all kind of a plain chant is just all the voices singing the same melody. Okay, sort of like what you would hear in a soccer stadium with people singing songs and things like that, except that this is a rather well-known plain chant from the church. Now, the reason we hear this is because the mass that follows is based on that
the text
that plain chant. Now there are a lot of ways that the composer can use the plain chant in the mass. He can set it as a cantus firmus, which is usually sort of like a tenor voice that's just sort of singing the exact melody while everybody else just sort of decorates on top of it. Now in this kind of music, if you happen, and the plain chant is usually unidentifiable because first of all, it'll be buried under these higher voices, and second of all, they'll be adding all these other passing notes and sort of ornamentation to it themselves, so it's almost unidentifiable. But the idea is that the spirit of the plain chant sort of like is in there, and you don't have to necessarily hear it in order to for your kind of, I guess, subconscious to pick it up. You kind of have a sense that it's there on some deep level. But that's in this case, the Pange Lingua though is partially sung in most of the church movements, but we don't unlike on what's normally normal practice on these type of recordings, we don't get the whole mass together. It's broken up by these different the various
of
movements of the mass.
Here,
there are other compositions that break it up, and I thought this was a really nice idea because when you hear when you go to a mass, I mean, you certainly don't have the Kyrie followed by the Gloria followed by the Credo. I mean, there's all this talking in between. And so instead of like having us kind of go suffer through a mass, an actual mass, we get other compositions which are pretty varied. Actually, they chose some good stuff.
Motet and
Incidentally, I should mention the final movement of a mass is usually, almost always, the Agnus Dei, Lamb of God. You take away the sins of the world, and in that movement, we hear for the first time in the third iteration of Lamb of God, we hear the entire missa, the entire Pange Lingua plain chant, the entire thing for the first time. It's only partially sung in all the other movements, if we can call them that. All right, so first of all, we have, between the Kyrie and Gloria, we have a motet, which is a religious work in this case, Ave Maria, Virgo Serena, and another motet between the Gloria and Credo, Inviolata, Integra et Casta Est. These are all about Mary, by the way. So we have the Mass and all these songs about Mary. And then, oddly enough, on this completely religious recording, between the Credo and the Sanctus, we get two popular songs, which is a little bit of a surprise. It really just kind of break the mood, but in a good way. I kind of feel like if we were at the Mass, it's almost like you're looking away from the altar and up into the choir loft to see what's going on up there. Well, and I think the first song is called Vivrai-je toujours, okay?
Yeah, and this one has a really great voice movement in it. It broke me out of my religious sort of trance when I heard this, and I thought, wow, this is sort of like an intermission with lots of things to follow that sort of gets your attention back into things again. So I really enjoyed this movement a lot.
Yeah, in a really big way too, because the singer is lamenting the pain that the person he's singing to, the pain that his listener can satisfy, and I think we know what that pain is. Okay. I like to think that this particular episode is happening in the choir loft, where the singer is hoping to give this person causing him pain a Renaissance workout, if you will.
Can we say that on adult music?
We just did.
We implied it, perhaps.
Yeah, there you go. It's and then after that we have this catchy frottola called El Grillo, which means the cricket. Okay, and this is an earworm, or shall we say, an ear cricket, because it just stayed in my ear all week.
Yeah.
El Grillo en buon cantore. Okay, and I just heard that all week long. I was just kind of bouncing around to this.
Wow.
It's a very cute song. It's a frottola. A frottola is the predecessor to the madrigal. It was a little more homophonic. Okay, whereas madrigals got a little more polyphonic afterwards, and they became the norm. Okay, it's very light and it's really cute. Okay. And at the end we learn again that the cricket sings for love. Okay, this is not the and of course for erotic love, not for the love of God or anything like that.
Well,
so these are really
a little bit of both in there, you know.
Yeah. Okay, this was really playful. I really enjoyed this a lot. I've been singing all week. El Grillo en buon cantore. Yeah, that really stuck in my ear.
When we get out the recorder, I think we should be capturing that.
No, we already have. I think we've captured enough. Yeah, okay. Yeah. There you go. Anyway, our attention comes back to
a high res of that, or
no? I think I'll pass.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, give that particular track a listen, because it's really cute. It'll stick in your ear. If you think the Renaissance was a boring time, I think this might change your mind. Although I have heard that track before performed by other groups, and I've heard like peppier performances. But this is again really beautiful with these gorgeous voices. It's a little, it's careful, but it's not like to the point where it's losing its character. It's actually really, really good. I've never heard a cleaner performance of it. Okay, back to the Mass, the Sanctus and Benedictus. They're very spare, which I guess sort of suits. The programming is very nice. Grillo also isn't a very ornate piece either. Okay, now I have to confess that after hearing El Grillo, that was so in my head that the rest of this album didn't really sink in as much. And in the track between the Sanctus and the Agnus Dei, Virgo Salutiferi Genitrix, is very complex, and it was a little hard to follow. This is kind of more in line with what we expect from Josquin. Okay, the contrapuntal lines bring the text a bit out of alignment, so it's kind of hard to figure out where you are. But again, it's beautifully recorded, and you can, if you listen carefully, if you follow one voice, you'll kind of have an idea of where the text is. Okay. Okay. The men, by the way, in this recording seem to me to be further up front, and the soprano seems like she's elevated and far back, because that voice carries a lot. Really ingenious, again. Okay, then we have the Agnus Dei, where we finally hear the entire Pangelingua plain chant, the melody, okay, of it sung to the Agnus Dei text. And after that, Josquin departs, and I guess they're symbolizing his death here or something like that, because the next two works are by two other composers, and they're both about Josquin. They're kind of acknowledging his death and his greatness. The first is called O Mors Inevitabilis, which is laments the death of Josquin. That's by Hieronymus Vinders. And then Jacquet of Mantua has a motet called Dum Vostos Adre Fluctus, whose text I really couldn't figure out what there's all this weird Greek mythology in here, and then Josquin appears in it, and I couldn't make out what was being said, but it was a lament for Josquin. I knew I figured out that much. Okay, but anyway, so
musically I preferred the Jacquet de Mantua just because it had more of what I liked. In the main recording, in voice movement. The Wien Dives was a bit static to me.
It was a little more straightforward though, as far as its message
Content.
Did you listen with the text? Did you follow the text when you were?
Well, yeah. By the time I got to the end, my eyes were getting tired from looking at the various translations and then the English. So
yeah. So anyway, I would say this is if you're new to Josquin, this is an excellent starting point for his music. By the way, the Panjalingua Mass is believed to be the last mass that Josquin ever wrote. And it looks like he was going in a new direction, because this is not really an ornate sounding of polyphonic mass at all. It is polyphonic, but it sounds a little bit thinner in its texture. It's a little clearer. Maybe Josquin was getting the message from the church authorities that he had to make those texts a little more audible to the church-going people. Yeah. We wouldn't call them an audience, would you? To the congregation.
I don't know what you say. Not
congregation,
captive, but captivated.
Captive but captivated.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Not sure
so anyway, highly recommended. I especially like the way, as I said before, that the mass was broken up by these other works. It kind of lent a lot of interest. This is a program you can listen to from beginning to end without stopping. Okay, it's very appealing as a program.
We talked about this a little bit when you listen to music pre-Baroque.
Yeah.
That whatever music you listen to, you're conditioned from whatever it is that you know. And if you have a normal sort of progress through the traditional Western classical tradition that starts at Baroque or something, if you go beyond that to modern compositions, you have some expectations that are hard to deal with. And in the same way, if you go to earlier works here, it's hard not to see through that lens of what was codified and developed, solidified in Baroque and afterwards. And so what I like about this music, it's more suggestive than it is prescriptive. So I don't think you can really call what you hear in this music true developed counterpoint, but it's sort of contrapuntal in nature. So I was looking at different analysis of his music and what the main features are, and I saw a description that I could understand, and so that said he has what has been described as motivic cells. And what is that?
We have that in Beethoven as well.
But what I like about it, so they're sort of melodic pieces that you can easily recognize, and you'll hear this phrase that gets passed on to the next voice. So it could go either way, from female voices to a lower voice or to a male voice, but it's sort of a phrase that gets handed off throughout the arrangement. And although it's not developed to some grand extent and embellished upon, you do feel that movement that goes through with carrying on an idea as it's passed through, not to the extent that it's developed by Bach and others in Baroque, or then even more so in classical music. And the other thing we talked about, this sort of expectation of sort of cadences in music, and those are sort of really set with harmonic progressions in Baroque, and then not variated from so much in classical music. In here, you can hear sort of a lot of soft cadences, and then
it's like the end of a phrase, and they're all cadence, and then
or suggested, or partial cadences, but they don't play a big sort of ending point. The music moves on quickly after some sort of place that you may be looking for more based on what you're used to in Baroque music or later periods. But this music doesn't dwell on those things so much. And in listening to that, I think you sort of reminded of, later periods of music in Romantic and after, where, sort of having to hit these certain touch points was, they tried consciously to get away from. But you have to think intellectually that at this time, those things weren't so established. So they weren't even expectations in the composer's mind. So I like that sort of freedom of the music sort of seems to move on to more important things rather than connecting sort of required harmonic, sort of bases that it has to connect with that. And so to me, I found that part very interesting, that it defies what I expect to hear more than other music that I often listen to. And so that was really enjoyable.
Yeah, right. Part of the reason, incidentally, that happens is because these works are being written to a text that is already in existence. So the music has to fit the text.
It has to serve the text, yeah.
The whole idea of instrumental music, long movements of instrumental music, started in the Baroque era, before the Renaissance. In the Renaissance, if you heard an instrumental work, it was just usually dances or some song or something like that. But the whole idea of having a long movement with no words in it really developed in the Baroque era, and the way they maintained interest was through tonality, through these cadences. And as the centuries wore on, these cadences got further and further between, until in the Romantic era, when we were completely decadent, we rarely heard them at all. I think Wagner's opera Tristan and Isolde has maybe one cadence in the entire 3-hour structure. The audience was going crazy, probably waiting for that cadence. And in those days, people sort of like the way you have expectations for a pop song. People in those days would have had expectations from the music they were listening to. Yeah. They would have been aware of these sorts of things. What
is it?
When's the cadence coming?
93 or 4% familiarity is what the average person is expecting from something. So.
Is that right? Where'd you hear that?
Oh, some. I'm always reading these kind of things, but
that's pretty interesting. That sounds good.
Not what the adult audience expects, but. We strive for
the adult audience expects only 90%, right?
Only 90%.
Well, we want familiarity, right? All right, so when you're writing to a text, the text drives the word, the music. So the form that the music is going to take is going to depend on the text. Now, with the mass, this became a pretty standard thing. So you sort of, after a while, had an idea of what those were going to sound like. I want to mention one more thing. When you're listening to this, it's all, with the exception of El Grillo en Buon Cantore. Love that. I can't get that out of my head.
I didn't get the recorder set again.
Yeah, no worries. I think we're being recorded now. But when you're listening to a polyphonic work, you have to keep in mind, and this is a little odd if you've grown up listening to pop music like I did. It took me a while to actually work this out and how to do this. All of the voices, all of the melodies you're hearing are of equal importance. Okay? Now, in a homophonic work, generally speaking, the highest voice is the most important one. That's where the melody is, and the rest is kind of accompaniment. It's kind of like not as catchy or things like that. But in polyphonic music, you're hearing 4 voices that are of equal importance, including the bass. Okay, usually the bass will anchor a homophonic work, but in polyphony, it's another voice, and you really need to be hearing that. Keep that in mind. There's no one single voice that's more important than the others. Maybe polyphonic music should come back. We should put that in pop music. Yeah. What do you think?
Let's have the melody and the bass more often.
Yeah, let's have the melody and the bass. See how people react to that. We're so used to the bass just anchoring the chords, just kind of like holding it all down. Yeah, in popular music, not in the Renaissance. Everybody was equally poor, I guess.
Musical equity.
They had achieved musical equity back then, and now we favor the highest voice. Unbelievable. Anyway,
my aging ears can't even hear those high tones anymore.
I remember I taught a class about a fugue, okay, and I wanted the students to identify the theme when it came in, because you hear it. This is the first thing you hear, and they all heard them in the soprano, the alto, and the tenor, but in the bass voice they didn't hear it at all. They just didn't listen to the bass. It was very interesting to me.
They've been conditioned against it with those terrible earbuds.
Yeah. I just want to say also to the audience, I mean, I grew up listening to pop music, so I really had to learn how to listen to classical music and really other kinds of music. But it's worth the effort because learning how to listen to a new kind of music, and if you figure it out, then it's kind of like learning a new language. When you do that, other languages and other kinds of music become easier to learn because you kind of know that you're going to have to do a certain amount of work in order to, kind of understand it. So anyway, give this a listen. It's just it's beautiful as it is. This is a gorgeous recording. Clean recording, so clean that it makes suds.
Wow. Well,
I felt squeaky clean after listening to it.
To go rinse off before the next one.
Let's go rinse off before the next part because we're going to need it. All right.
That's right.
All right. Coming up next, we have a new recording of Beethoven's 7th Symphony, and really my personal favorite, although I sometimes like the 6th a lot too, because that's a simpler one, but I love the gorgeous melodies in that, the pastoral. But the 7th Symphony by Beethoven, this is a recording by MusicAeterna, conducted by Teodor Currentzis. Now, if you're a classical music listener and you know what's going on in the field and you hear that name, Teodor Currentzis, you know you're really in for something because he's got a unique sort of approach to everything that he records. Now, since hearing his really amazing recording of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring back in around 2014, I guess it was, I've really had my ears on this composer. Now, he does something rather unique. He'll only record one work per album, and that's the case here. No extras on any of his recordings since Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. Before that, he did a few Mozart operas and things like that, but I think he's kind of landed on this thing where he's only giving you this.
For some reason, these recordings really polarize the listeners,
Would you read the reviews?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people either love these or they hate these, which I found kind of interesting. So.
Well, yeah, they're all certainly kind of new, all right? Now, before this, I want to mention, before this, he had recorded Beethoven's fifth Symphony, the really famous one, that one. And that's overplayed. We've heard it a million times. And yet he managed to make it come up sounding really fresh. Okay? It's kind of lean, it's a bit aggressive, but it's not powerful the way that the really famous recordings are, especially the one by Carlos Kleiber, which is I think it's the Vienna Philharmonic, which is considered to be the best recording of the Fifth Symphony. But, it turns out that Kleiber also recorded the Seventh Symphony, and that's considered to be the best recording of that work as well. Yeah. And not only that, back in the day, Kleiber also released, he didn't record much, Kleiber, and he released the Fifth Symphony and the Seventh Symphony on individual discs, like Currentzis has here. So I think Currentzis is trying to echo Kleiber in this. He's really laying down the gauntlet for himself. He wants that comparison, I think.
Yeah, I'll come back when we get to the end of this, but I mean, that's sort of my basic question with this is why record this? Unless,
especially the Fifth,
you could bring any Beethoven. Why record any of these? Unless you thought you had something new to bring to it. Why play it safe and be lost in the archives of various recordings that will be considered less than something else? But when we get to the end, I'll give my idea about that with some other observations on it.
Well, Currentzis, of course, always does have a unique approach, and that is the case here.
He's sort of the new punk conductor of the
I guess you could call him that.
Yeah. He's been described as such in various articles that I've seen.
Really?
Yeah.
I hadn't read that, but I did know that he was polarizing. I had read about that. Yeah. But critics tend to be pretty excited by his record, as am I. I'm always curious to hear what he's going to do.
I read a number of reviews, just casual things like Amazon and other record sites where they...
Are these listeners or are these professional critics?
Listeners who rip apart how much they disliked parts of the recording, but still gave it 5 stars because, they couldn't stop from enjoying it, even though they were bothered by what he did.
I completely understand that, and that's going to come up in my discussion here too.
So when I was listening to this, I have a few recordings of this, but the one I had,
as do we all.
the one I had at hand that I thought was I don't know. I have some really old ones from like, the classic series, like in the 50s and 60s. But so the one I had that had modern sonics was the RCA of Günter Wandt, who's a respected Beethoven and also Bruckner recording. And my expectations, well, in some ways they were confirmed, but I was surprised by some things that were different. But as we go through the movements, I'll bring those up.
Okay. Anyway, I think that it's a good idea to bring up Wagner's comment about this particular symphony, the Seventh. He said that he considered Beethoven's Seventh to be the apotheosis of the dance. Okay, because these are 4 highly rhythmically charged movements in anybody's hands, really. But if you're actually thinking of standing up in the concert hall and dancing to them, I think you better sit down now. The rest of us are trying to listen. Okay. Anyway, the whole danciness of this really kind of comes out. He seems to really hit the bass, like the first beat in each bar, or wherever the accent happens to be, because Beethoven likes to play with the where the beat is. He'll often like throw the listener off by placing like the sforzandos in the middle of the measure or something like that, so that you're hearing like 2 beats when you have a 3-beat sort of measure going. He likes to mess up the listener's understanding of the meter. Well,
I noticed that throughout all of these, especially in the first movement, the poco sostenuto, there's great attention to the details of articulation, more so than in any other recording I've heard of it. The contrasts here in articulation, but overall dynamics are huge.
Right. Especially in the lower end, the bass and the timpani are really loud.
You're going to reach for the volume control on the soft passages, and then you're going to be blown away by the louder passages. So he's really emphasizing both sort of articulation differences in a line where the accents are, and then in the overall pianissimo and forte passages in the works. So there's huge dynamic contrast in his interpretation of these.
In the entire all 4 movements really are like that.
Yes.
Also, he manages in this movement, and really in all 4 of the movements too, to get a really the ones that are like this. He gets a really sort of dancey, sort of light-footed kind of like rhythm going, like dun 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 dun. It kind of really. It really kind of gets into your sort of nervous system, like it's sort of energizing. It's really fantastic.
One of the things I thought, it was interesting to me because it carries this sense of movement, but then when I compared the whole recording to the Günter Wandt version, I realized that the tempos are actually much slower.
Yeah, and the Carlos Kleiber too, which is the one I'm very familiar with.
So the track lengths are a lot shorter. And then when I compared them, but he's able to carry a sense of movement with slower tempos, and I'm wondering how he did that. And so one of the things I noticed was that somehow in this recording, it's not just the recording. I don't want to say it's that, but in the way he balances the voices, that there's a lot of clarity here. In a lot of Beethoven recordings. When the passages get big, there's a lot that's lost in sort of the mass of sound. But here, you can, especially in the clarity of all the string parts, things that I never noticed before come out. And that despite as I mentioned, the dynamics, the loud passages being really loud throughout, you can notice the clarity of all the parts are easy to pick out, and you don't get a huge sort of wall of just sort of not distorting, but sort of covering sound by the larger voices. You can easily hear the parts here, and I noticed things that I hadn't picked out before listening here. With the balance of sound and then the articulation. So I thought that was pretty interesting to me, and also that it seems to create this sense of motion It never seems like it's actually slower, but then when I compare it to another recording that I know, the tempos are actually slower, but the motion is still there. So those things I found really interesting.
Yeah, it has something to do with pulse as opposed to going to the bar. I don't really understand how that works, not being a conductor myself. That would be nice. But I know what you're talking about as far as like these little details in the score just popping out. One, because he also sort of emphasizes some of them. For example, one that I noticed that really kind of surprised and rather that I rather liked was in the opening, the first theme. Now the first movement starts with a slow introduction. And then when the kind of dancey rhythm starts, the dun 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 dun, you hear the melody that just sort of emerges out of that dun dun dun, and then there's a sequence down dun dun, but it doesn't go dun dun dun. I always thought it was dun dun dun, but there's a little grace note on that last note dun 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 dun, dun 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 dun, and he really hits that grace note harder than other composers do. Not really hard. It's sort of subtle, but it stands out. It pops out. I didn't even know that grace note was there, and I had heard this work how many times. So it's sort of a little interesting. And he does this again and again in this movement. There are all sorts of sort of string figurations that I wasn't aware of, and all sorts of like detail that pops out. And I thought this was just fascinating. I really loved it. Okay, now the second movement of this work is very famous, of course. It's sort of like this. It's sort of like a march or a sort of dirge sort of rhythm, and it starts with the bass. Now on this recording, the opening melody played in the bass and the cellos it's so quiet, so like such a gossamer thin sound. Well, it was immediately noticeable because I was like
soft string start. I wrote
because. Okay, I live
almost
in
non-existent.
Right, it was almost inaudible, and the fact of the matter is, I was listening to this on my stereo, and I live in an area where there are people walking by outside. I kind of live in an area where there's a mountain near me, and people like to go out and climb the mountain. And you can generally hear them talking. There's schoolgirls around, and school children. There's a school right up the street, so you hear them kind of going by. I think it's a girls' school. I've actually haven't figured that out yet, but. During this part, it was playing, and normally I don't hear the people outside, but I'm trying to concentrate on the melody, and it really is something where you're leaning in, when you're on the sofa, and you're kind of leaning into the speaker so you could hear it better, and all I was hearing was the voices outside, and I couldn't really make it out. It was the voices outside were drowning it out, and I was really tempted to go to the window and just yell out the window and say, "Hey, I'm listening to Beethoven!" But I didn't do that, thankfully.
The window's broken by those.
Yeah, well,
girls.
But but the fact that I wanted to do that told me that I was really engaged with this recording, and I wanted to hear it.
I'm lucky. Anyway, all my neighbors are elderly, and I believe hard of hearing, so I can listen at 100 watts, as many decibels as I want. But I was sort of wondering what was going on here. Like, why is this so quiet? It was extremely low level.
Yeah, it was. I think to a fault. I really think that was. I guess he wants to. He wants the drama of the volume coming. It really does kind of like build. It doesn't just suddenly come in and just blow you off your sofa like in that old Maxell poster where the guy's like being blown away from from the 1980s. But it gradually gets louder, and then everything is okay. But I thought because it's such a famous and memorable like melody, and it's really what you hear. It's sort of like acts as like a passacaglia bass until like the whole thing changes in the middle. With this other. Kind of almost kaleidoscopic sort of like development happening over it. But I wish that were a little louder. I thought that was kind of an odd mistake. Incidentally, a little historical note. Beethoven's symphonies were the loudest symphonies ever written up to its time. So they really did kind of like, as with this recording, they did excite and annoy audiences depending on their kind of temperaments at the time. Okay, so he had his supporters and his detractors as well, as Currentzis does. And I think Currentzis might be trying to remind us of that, to try to give us that feeling of what his audience, Beethoven's original audiences, might have felt like hearing these works.
Could be.
Yeah, but this builds up, and when it comes to the end of this section, the first section before it goes into the middle section, we hear those really quiet bass again. Okay, and I was kind of like, I thought it was a little too quiet. You got to keep in mind, we live in houses here. We need to be able to hear this sound. It's not like we're in a concert hall. You know that if you were hearing this in a concert hall, though, some idiot would cough like right as those lines were playing. So you just can't win anyway, only in the recording studio. He must have enjoyed it himself. All right, third movement and the fourth movement. I'll do these together. Again, the third movement is kind of a bit brusque in its rhythm. It feels kind of pushy, It's got kind of like a brusque sort of humor to it. And again, rhythmically very incisive, okay, very dancey again. And the last movement as well, the same. These were I felt these were a little more straightforward. By this point, I kind of was getting sort of used to his whole aesthetic. So I wasn't, again, there are orchestral details popping out, again, as I mentioned in the first movement, the third and fourth movement, and the second movement too. This happens, but by this time I had warmed to it a little bit, and I just found myself to be pretty high by the time this whole CD ended. This symphony. It's the only work on the album. It really had elevated my mood. Okay, so I think I would recommend this. I understand these people who are complaining about it and then giving it 5 stars because I kind of feel I know what they mean. Anyway, I did like it. Anyway.
My summation.
It was certainly new.
My notes say a lean Beethoven 7 with focus on details, clarity of strings, articulation and accents seems to be divisive in others' opinions. But
yes,
why record this unless you can bring something new to it? It's been recorded so many times.
Yeah.
And I believe he does bring a fresh take on it, and it seems, it sort of shrugs off convention, and he takes it in some new directions. And like I say, the final, the Presto and Allegro con brio are not so, unconventional. But I think it's fresh, and it seems
it is
like,
fresh is a good word for it. That's exactly right. That's what I would say.
Have gone through Weight Watchers and shrugged off some sort of cultural expectations.
Yeah, but it's got this tremendous energy and forward momentum too. It's really sort of exciting. I don't know, but it's energetic. Let's say it's got this real. It's really uplifting. I liked it a lot.
I enjoyed this. And
I did too. The only thing is that second movement, I really wish those basses were louder. That's it. At the beginning and at the end of those phrases. And at intermittent parts in the movement.
To hear.
It's just too, you could have it quiet, but it was too quiet. It was almost like quiet. Inaudible.
To be in the soundproof chamber.
Yeah.
I do want to say.
So I'd still be annoyed.
Here, well, with classical music, this is one of the things that makes something like this, Beethoven or any major composer, interesting. In the case of Beethoven, all of his symphonies have been recorded so many times. So there are so many favorite versions that listeners have, so many standards to conform to. You're up against a wall of expectation. And in extreme contrast to this, going back to our episode 10, we spoke of the Grosvenor recording.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the absolute other end of the spectrum, recording a work that's not been recorded before.
Yeah,
and there's so many other questions and problems that arise from that, in that who's going to listen to it, how are they going to take it, how do you conduct it, and How do the musicians approach it? All those questions, the complete opposite of this. Anyway, I found this one, I was intrigued because I didn't know what it was. And then, you hadn't heard.
You're talking about Ranitzky now.
Yeah, Ranitzky. And so we said, well, let's talk about this. And, the person responsible for getting these things recorded contacted us.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, Daniel Bernardson. And so we've had some exchanges, and we invited him to come share some of this experience with us, because this, as we saw in the album title, this was Volume 1 of Ranitzky. And actually there's going to be, I believe, 2 more volumes. The next one
he
coming
informed
out,
us there were going to be 2 more.
Yeah, and so this is music that, went at the time, it was just as popular as any other music from the time period, and he was one of the biggest Austrian composers at the time, but somehow history hasn't been as kind to Ranitzky's. He wrote a lot of music, so many symphonies and other things. But anyway, Daniel has been working on this for a long time to get this music recorded, and he's actually invited the conductor of this recording, the Czech Chamber Philharmonic Orchestra, Parvadis, and he's going to join us as well and give us some insights on how this happens, getting previously unrecorded music recorded, and what that kind of process is, and how to get it out to listeners, and hopefully let us know what's coming up next in this series. So we're going to be talking to them soon, and we're going to share that on the podcast, hopefully timed with the release of the next volume.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that myself.
And exactly when, we're not going to say. So that's a little teaser to the audience.
Well, we don't really know.
We don't really know, although we do know.
It depends when the recording comes out.
Yeah, but we do have the interview set up, and we're definitely going to have their insightful experiences and a greater idea of what's going on here, and find out apparently the conductor Marek Stile is also involved in some other projects with first-time recordings too. So I'm intrigued by that idea of reviving things that have not been shared with modern audiences. So
yeah, you get a fuller understanding of the past, and there was a lot of good music. It didn't become like the aesthetic, but it was all good, and it was all kind of vying for that. It's sort of like the thing about classical music before the whole period instruments movement broke everything open. It was sort of like you'd have only the major players of the time. It would be like kind of listening to, like, say, if you're into 60s music, like listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and then you don't know anything about bands like,
the
10 years after, or the Zombies.
No
one told me about. You want to hear about them too,
Yeah. So anyway, we're looking forward to our upcoming interview with Daniel and Marek, and we're going to share that with our listeners sometime in the summer when this new release comes out, and that's going to be exciting insight into some of this forgotten but now available to us classical music recordings. So,
I find this sort of thing very exciting about classical music, just rediscovering music of the past that's just been ignored, since its day.
So stay tuned.
I think it's really great. Yeah.
And what's next on our classical list?
Well, before we get to the next work, I want to just mention, since it's a piano album, I want to mention that May 4th was the 366th birthday of Bartolomeo Cristofori. Say it with me. What a luxurious name. Bartolomeo Cristofori. He is the inventor. Well, that's okay.
Almost.
Oh, you almost said it with me. Who is Bartolomeo Cristofori? Well, if you love the piano, this is a name to remember. He was the inventor of the modern piano, the one that uses hammers on the strings rather than a plectrum that plucks the strings, which is what a harpsichord does. The advantage of having hammered strings is that you can by the force that you hit the key with, you can make the sound softer or louder. And that was a new invention, and that really started a whole new way of playing the piano, starting with around Haydn and Mozart's time.
It's usually better to be hammered than plucked.
Yeah, I find that to be the case.
Yeah, when it comes to being played percussively.
I think I'm going to be hammered by the end of this podcast, in fact. with our Knob Creek single barrel bourbon here, flowing freely. I don't know.
We should feature some Prohibition era songs. There's a lot of good ones from
the thing about this, I don't drink much generally, but ever since since Prohibition started here in Japan, I find myself drinking more. I don't understand how that happens. And so I guess it's not available, so you just kind of panic. You say, "Oh, I got to get all this booze from my house or something." I don't know.
I generally find that music and drinking goes together.
I would like to suggest for classical music listeners a nice cognac with classical music. That works really well.
Cognac goes well. You have to set the mood.
It's a different kind of thing than than bourbon. It gives you a different sort of high.
We can save the bourbon until we get to the jazz section.
Right. Well, I don't know. I started with it today.
Oh. Well.
Anyway, so our So with this understanding that Cristofori's 366th birthday has just passed, we go to the greatest of all pianists, because he invented a lot of new technique for the piano that is still used to this day, Franz Liszt. Okay, the music of Franz Liszt. Now, he may not have been the greatest piano composer of all time. That's probably either Beethoven or Chopin, or... There are many others, too, that we can go for. Rachmaninoff, Debussy, people like that.
Medtner's no slouch.
Oh, I love Medtner. God, you had to mention him. I'm going to make my case for Medtner's music one day. I'm a little fed up with people saying, "Oh, he's second-rate Rachmaninoff." Actually, it's the other way around, people. Okay? And I'll explain why one day. Rachmaninoff just added more sugar to his... he had more melodic sugar, that's all. That's why you like it more. Because you need that sweetness in your ears. Anyway, Franz Liszt. Okay, this is a recording. It's an album simply called Liszt, and it's by the British pianist Benjamin Grosvenor, who is a real superstar these days. He's
a youngster, too.
He's fairly young. Yeah, he's young. He is young. I heard him when he was very, very young, and I was like, oh, he's good. I'm not really interested in him. But since last year, he did a recording of the Chopin piano concertos, and that really caught my ear. I was like, wow, this is really great playing. And so I had to hear this one, the Liszt one. So this is a pianist that grew on me, basically. I think when he was younger, I didn't find his he had all the technique, but I wasn't finding his interpretations terribly interesting. And now suddenly I am. Okay, this is the key work on this disc is on the Decca label. It's called simply Liszt, and it's got a picture of our pianist with his chin in his palm in a black and white photo on the cover, looking directly at the camera. The key work on this is the first one, the Piano Sonata.
Yes,
this is and this is really the standout work on this disc, too. I mean, I guess this one had to come first. It's a big 30-minute single-movement work, which is nevertheless divided into 4 tracks on the recording, so that you know when the 4 movements start within the continuous structure.
In sonata form with 4 movements. That's a Liszt kind of.
I think the first movement is a straight sonata, though, and it just kind of goes on. All right. So anyway, this did I write anything about this? Oh, I didn't. I got to remember. This was an amazing performance, I thought. The pianist's control over the all right, now there's some real blistering technique required to play this piece, and people get really excited by that. Now, if you listen to classical music a lot, to me, like, getting excited over a pianist's amazing technical ability to get around the keyboard is sort of like being amazed that a Major League Baseball pitcher can throw 90 miles an hour. Yeah, sure, none of us can do that, but it's kind of expected at this level. What makes technique like this really special is the gradations of tone that he's while he's doing all this amazing, acrobatic technique, he still managed to keep like the separate voices, at a certain like gradation of tone where they're very, very clear. It's just amazing, the technical ability in this. This is one of the best performances of this work I've ever heard. I also like the Stephen Huff one a lot too. That was my former, and probably maybe still my favorite one. I got to really think about it, but this one really caught my ear. Now he has a way, this pianist, of really drawing out the melodies in this piece by like kind of slowing them down. It's sort of like, boy, how can I explain this? When something traumatic is about to happen to you, you know how everything just seems to slow down as it's happening. Everything seems to be moving in slow motion. He almost creates that sort of effect, and you're hearing all these little details, and then the music will just like explode and just sort of go into this really amazing technique. There again, like as with the Currentzis' Beethoven, there were a lot of details that came out of this that really amazed me. I was riveted throughout this whole entire 30-minute work, which I always found a bit complicated. I found it hard to follow, and not in this case. It was really all very clearly laid out by the pianist. He fully understood the structure, and he fully put it across. Really no criticisms at all. This was a great performance, I thought.
Yeah, I listened to a few other recordings that I have of this, and his beginning is rather mysterious compared to some other recordings that sort of charge out of the gate. So he sets sort of, kind of nebulous beginning. But then once he gets into it, he has really great phrasing and articulation, which I think on the detailed end of it, you can look at this piece in a lot of different ways because it's a huge structure, but there's a lot of smaller segments to it. And he really understands this piece. In reading of his approach, apparently he's kind of fastidious in his research of previous recordings and interpretations. And I think that shows that he really has this work on the micro and macro level committed, to his mind with a map of it. And as a listener, there's a lot you need to get involved in with this. You have to listen to it multiple times to understand the overall structure and then, the smaller sections within the work. And he's got that, captured on both levels. So I found that interesting because the small connections of phrases and the articulation are great, but he also gets the overall sweep of that. And he creates a lot of different contrasts of sort of tonal colors inside of that. Yeah. Also,
that was one recording
I have that some Japanese had recommended to me is the Japanese pianist Minoru Nojima.
Oh, I remember. Actually, I've heard this one.
Yeah. I listened to that and some other ones. And what I thought, too, is not specifically with Nojima, but in general, I find that sometimes like Liszt means like a license to be sort of bombastic.
I feel like kind of Nojima sort of approached it like that. Yeah. Not quite bombastically, but he for the display, you know what I mean? Yeah,
but I don't feel like Grosvenor ever... He's very dynamic, but it's never uncontrolled. So I felt like it was all within... a reasonable sort of limits of expression. I never felt like it got out of the reins. So I like that. And with the whole narrative of the piece, it took me several listens to actually get that in my mind myself. But seeing that the work he must have put into on smaller sections with, the whole piece, I could appreciate that he had both of those smaller structures and larger structures in mind. Yeah. And, incredibly detailed and complete narrative performance by a musician who I think he's not turned 30 yet. I think he's
I think he may still be in his 20s, but he's already a major pianist.
Approach to this, and
yeah, just fantastic.
Wonderful.
By the way, we probably have just lost all of our Japanese listeners for saying something negative about Nojima. They really love him.
Well, I can't say it's bad. Yeah. Well, I do have to say
he's a good pianist, but
the sonics on that album.
I just feel like the approach is kind of.
I think someone left the air conditioner on when they recorded that album or something.
Well, yeah, he has 2 albums, the Liszt and there's one of Ravel's piano music too. And yeah, it just sounds like they put him in a room and just kind of recorded him just to get him out there.
They could have done better with the sound recording.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Grosvenor. The next piece is sort of it's a little transition to the rest of the program. It's a berceuse, which is a lullaby. And this is kind of not a terribly memorable piece. Liszt has a lot of works like this. One of the things that really fascinated me about this and really showed me that Grosvenor had done like a lot of thinking about all of these works is that in this piece there are the themes, and what Liszt will do, you almost get the idea that you're hearing an improvisation when you listen to this particular piece. Now, it's all written out, obviously. He's reading it from a score. But you kind of get the impression, like, when the theme is over, Liszt won't just, like, he won't be like Beethoven, where he'll go from one theme to the next. Well, he does in the sonata, but that's like a special case. But in a piece like this, he'll start sort of meandering around as though he's, like, looking for another idea to kind of present to the audience. So there'll be these, like, kind of, like, a few, like, stray notes where he's kind of thinking, and then suddenly there'll be this, like, downward scale in thirds or in sixths. And so, what can I wow them with next? You almost get the impression that he's just kind of playing some thing while he's thinking of the next thing to do. And Grosvenor really captures that quality in this particular performance of this piece. You get that kind of idea that he's kind of thinking, what should I do next? Even though this whole score is written out and he knows exactly what he's going to do next. So you get the impression that you're at a Liszt concert, maybe waiting for him to, cast his spell on his audience. Okay, I really rather enjoyed that quality.
This piece, there's apparently 2 versions of this, and this is the second version.
This is the later one
that has more ornamentation, and so I noticed there's a lot of delicate playing in here that he handles very well, and so there's nice technique and phrasing that goes along with that.
All right, next we get 3 movements from the 3 works from the collection Années de Pèlerinage, the Years of Pilgrimage. Liszt traveled for 3 years, and he instead of keeping a diary, I guess he kept his diary in musical form, like he wrote his impressions as works. Okay, and these 3 are the 3 Sonetti di Petrarca, the medieval poet Petrarch or Petrarca, who was a contemporary of Dante. I always kind of compared Dante and Petrarca as to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, sort of like Dante had his spiritual love for Beatrice, and I feel like the Beatles were like the more, they weren't spiritual, but they were kind of the cleaner, more spiritual band, whereas the Rolling Stones were the bad boys, as was Petrarca, who had this almost carnal feeling for his love, Laura, okay, who he writes about a lot in his poems. It kind of plays out like that.
This whole adult music episode.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a whole episode on that. Okay. Anyway. That's the way I think of them, anyway. All right. Well, anyway, these 3 very romantic works and sort of these poetic sort of effusions on the poems, which are kind of they're not about Laura either. They're just sort of these sort of very sensual sort of praise of the day or of whatever, of heartbreak or whatever the poems in this case happen to be about. So, Lisztian, typical Lisztian fare, I'd say. You just get the impression Liszt must have been, he's kind of someone like I would have liked to have been. He just seemed to have known everything that was knowable at the time. He was the
man that men wanted to be and women wanted to be with.
Yeah, exactly. I find myself wanting to be him myself, because he was actually extremely well read and culturally, informed.
And he wrote a lot also, I believe. He wrote various essays and other writings about different subjects.
Right. So. Yeah, really one of the major musical influences of his day, is one of the great pianists of all time. Like I said, critics often say you'll read these things and say, if we were to go back in time and we could actually hear Liszt play, we'd probably be a little disappointed, because pianists today have probably developed technique far further than he ever did. But the point is, he came up with it. No one had ever heard this before. You got to really keep that in mind. Like, everybody else is standing on his shoulders, you know. So later pianists may have been better, like people like Rachmaninoff, and then even the pianists of today. But Liszt brought it into being, you know. All right, next comes the Reminiscence de Norma. Norma is an opera by Bellini, and it's a bel canto. This is the bel canto era of Italian opera. And Liszt did a lot of these sort of confections for piano based on like themes from operas. I think he did one on Carmen as well. Don't quote me on that. I'm not really sure. Carmen
this one I listened to.
Carmen may have come later. Yeah,
I compared it with the Marc-André Hamelin.
The recording that Hamelin made. Okay.
Yeah, and so that was kind of interesting because Hamelin is he plays it rather differently. His beginning, the way he sets the mood, is much more stately, and he uses a sustain very differently.
Hamelin, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of it was an interesting comparison. I couldn't say I liked one either, better than the other one, but they were very different in the mood that they set with these. But I felt that Grosvenor, his approach to this was
he's a bit understated, isn't he? He's kind of got all this great,
but it was in line with the rest of what he had done on this album.
Right, exactly.
If he had done it in a similar way, then I would have thought, well, this stands out. But I thought it matches the mood with the rest of the.
That's true. There's nothing at all profound about this piece. It really is a showpiece, and the way Hamelin plays it is I haven't heard this recording in a long, long time. But Hamelin being one of my favorite pianists, I've heard it.
Yeah.
He will show off he's not a showy pianist necessarily, but he will take those opportunities when they come up. Grosvenor doesn't do that. He plays this in an understated way, and he's kind of trying to give it structure where I really don't think there is much. So as far as that went, I don't know. I thought this was. It's an excellent performance, but I don't think you can add any weight to that. I don't really think there's much weight to this piece, and I think he was trying to bring a little more weight than it had. Okay. Anyway, it is exciting though. It's got some great technique in it, and all that fantastic tonal balancing is there. The last work is a transcription of the Schubert song Ave Maria, which is very, very famous. Everybody knows this. It's quite something. This is a beautiful performance of it as well, with all these fantastic, like filigree sort of ornamentation on the famous theme. A really great closer, I thought.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think he's got a lyrical approach to all the pieces.
Right.
And like I say,
it really comes out in this one, especially.
In the main course, the piano sonata, which is a monstrous 30 minutes.
That's the reason you want to listen to this album, by the way.
That's the main course, and he gets...
It's a long dessert.
Well, I shouldn't say it's a main course. That's a full course meal, and he gets each serving correct, and then the overall arch and the direction is really good too. Nice. And the other thing I made a note on this recording, the sonics. If you're going to listen to this much piano, you want the recording to be good, and this is very good. It's a very close microphone. Not much hall sound here at all. That's not a bad thing in this case.
Especially for this pianist with the subtle way he plays.
Yeah, you're going to feel like you're sitting right on top of the piano, and you'll get to hear every single aspect of that. Not much in the room. I didn't look up where this was recorded, if it's a studio or some hall or something, but it's not distracting at all.
It's a hall.
It's as if the piano is right before you, and so there's nothing obscured in the room sound of this recording at all.
Yeah, any of the loud playing too, it never really blows you away with the volume.
No, there's nothing overly done on this recording.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up where it was recorded here, if I can find this really quickly. Anyway. I don't know, it's it doesn't seem to say.
This is on Decca.
Recording
label,
location,
by the way,
Queen
right?
Elizabeth Hall, South Bank Centre, London. Okay, so it isn't a concert hall.
You won't have any idea what the hall is like, but you have a really clear idea of what the piano is like in that room.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, so it's some excellent recordings there. We hope you enjoy them.
Listen to those.
All right.
So that thus ends the classical portion of the recording. And well, I forgot to do my spiel at the beginning. So before we go on to the jazz, I'd like to remind our listeners that in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify and Apple Music for all the music. We talk about both classical and jazz here. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. All the music, that's 6 hours plus for this week, in one place on Deezer, where you can follow us at username Adult Music Podcast. You can get our podcast as well as all of the tunes on Deezer. If you can't see the full description or list on your app, please check us out on our host Podbean, where everything is listed very clearly. Depending on the app, on Apple it's fine, but some of the other pod apps, the description gets sort of jumbled into one large paragraph with the links and everything just put into one big sentence that's messy. So check us out on Podbean, where everything is coherent. And if you enjoy the podcast, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. And if you give us a ranking or write a review, it's going to help us get listed in the browsing category recommendations, and that's going to help us grow our audience. This week, Apple just came out with a new version. Of course, Apple Podcast is the number one listening forum.
That's the one I use. Yeah.
Yeah, but they came out with a new version. I just updated my iPhone, and they changed the podcasts, and the normal discovery menus are buried like 2 layers deeper.
Oh, boy.
So it takes people like several more clicks to find to the genres and subdivisions that they want, which means that more people are going to just click on what other people are already listening to. And if it's music, like the majority of it is K-pop. So if you've made it this far...
Is it K-pop even in the U.S. or just in Japan?
Everywhere. I don't know, because we can't see what the... but they're not Japanese K-pop ones, so I imagine that's an international...
so the whole world is listening to K-pop podcasts?
Like it seems like it, yeah.
It's really popular.
So please, take a minute, subscribe.
K-pop, incidentally, is Korean pop music.
Korean pop
for those who don't know. Yeah. Very popular now in Asia.
And in the U.S., too.
Oh, yeah, apparently, yeah. It's really right. Surprising.
Do take a second to please give us a ranking or write a short review. It's going to help us out. That those things get added into what the algorithms choose to show in the automated recommendations, which increases our chances of getting listened to by new people, and that would help us out a lot. Over and above that, if you'd like to contact us directly, if you have any comments or questions, something you'd like us to talk about, any opinions, our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And
every week we give you 6 recordings, 3 usually averaging 3 classical, 3 jazz, and really that's a recording for every day of the week. And then on the 7th day, you can listen to us and find out what you're going to hear next week.
Yeah, listen to us and find out something for next week. And you can get it all in one click. And we haven't had much joining up on the Deezer list. It's all right there. One click. Deezer is a great platform. So do check that out if you're wondering what you should stream
not
on.
Just a podcast, but as a streaming service. We both use it.
Yeah.
And like it a lot.
Good sound quality, nice catalog.
Yeah, good high-res function, good sound quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not sponsoring us, but they can if they want. We'll take them.
You can sponsor us.
Yeah. We just like them a lot, so that's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
Okay, so, on to jazz.
We'd like to hear from our listeners. And on to the world of jazz. So this week is a sax special.
It's a saxophone spectacular.
And revisiting some regions that we've went to before.
Yeah,
Actually,
we can't get out of Italy, can we?
no, we can't.
Although
And
Francesco Amenta can. He's apparently
he
in
can
New
get out
York
of
now.
Italy, and so
He's apparently in New York.
yeah, how my selection started was I had the final recording I had been waiting for. I knew it was going to be released because the label had indicated a date and released several teaser singles. So while I was scoping the new releases over the past few weeks, I noticed several sax ones. And what I'd like to do, when we talked about the Grammy Awards and other things, we were obligated to speak about some major releases and things, and that's all fine.
And that's a good thing, because we probably wouldn't have listened to them otherwise. And I think it's good to listen to them.
If there's something that everyone knows about already, jazz fans or something, all right, I'll talk about it, and especially if it's something I really like. But I'd like to give equal time to sort of musicians that certain audiences may not have any access to or have never heard of before. Because, that's what I like to, I always want to discover new players, because the way that the music business is and how things get promoted and what gets listened to, it's not necessarily the most talented people that get the most recognition. And there may be certain people who are known in different regions or countries that, nobody else knows about. I introduced a lot of my, old American friends from college days to Fabrizio Bosso, the great Italian trumpet player, and they never heard of him in the U.S. And now those guys are like they're raging for anything new that he does, and like that. And likewise, I'm trying to learn about the jazz scene there.
There's a
countries.
really happening jazz scene in Italy, and at the hotel I stay in Rome is actually, I just stumbled on it, on my own. The jazz musicians, whenever there's like a jazz festival in Rome, they'll stay at this hotel, and the two concierges are rather knowledgeable about jazz. So actually, if you like jazz, you might want to stay there. It's called Villa San Lorenzo, near St. John Lateran's church. So hang out there if you want to talk jazz. They also have a nice breakfast there too. They're not sponsoring us either.
Our friend Nathan from Milan. Nathan, I know you're listening. In now the unlocked down Italy, but
are they? I don't know.
I think
finally,
little by little. But he talked to Fabrizio, and because the last time he came to Japan, Fabrizio, somehow he missed the Kansai region, and I think he was in Tokyo and then Nagoya, and that was it. And it was on like a weekday, and I really wanted to go see him, but I just couldn't make it on like a Tuesday night. And I wondered, why they couldn't get him in Osaka too.
Yeah, it would cost hundreds of dollars. Just you have to get to get to Nagoya, and then
such is the way that jazz music works, especially in Japan these days. And now who knows what's going to happen after Corona. But at least we have recordings. So our first recording in the sax category is by the Italian-born saxophonist Francesco Amenta. And here he is with his American debut of an album called Midtown Walk. And
I'm betting Midtown means New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be. Yeah.
And this is a self-release on Amenta Music International. Yeah. Amenta's a tenor sax player from Bologna, Italy, and currently resides and plays in New York City. The album is co-produced by John Lee, who's a long music history. He was a bassist for Dizzy Gillespie, and he's produced other artists such as Larry Coryell, Roy Hargrove, Antonio Hart. So he's got some good production here. Prior to coming to the U.S., Amenta, he went to a music school in Bologna and Conservatory of Verona. He studied with Barry Harris, and also at the American School of Modern Music in Paris with Johnny Griffin and Charles Lloyd. So he's got a good educational background. He's also studied in The Hague in Holland, Royal Conservatory with Joshua Redman and Dave Liebman, both great sax players. And he has one previous solo recording called Colors and Ties from 2015. But that was when he was still living in the Netherlands. So this album here, Midtown Walk, is his first U.S. debut. And just as luck would have it, on this album, on piano, we have the magnificent Cyrus Chestnut, who
and
also,
he really plays out on this album. It's fantastic. He really is one of the centers of these performances.
Always gives his gospel-y, jazz-infused best on any album. And he's on 2 albums this week, just by luck of the draw. So he's here.
On this album, he uses the whole palette, the whole keyboard palette. Yeah.
Now, what I really like on this album that's interesting and makes it very international is we have 2 Greek jazz musicians. So on bass, we have, and I may butcher these names, forgive me, Kimon Karotzis on bass, hailing from Greece, who is a student of Ron Carter.
Oh.
So you can't have a better teacher than that, I imagine. And this one I thought was interesting. The name is, on drums, Gary Kurkazol. And Gary, I think of a Gary that I know, but no, this is not some old guy, young guy, Gary. This is a female Greek drummer. Gary.
Huh.
Maybe, I don't know Greek names, if it's a nickname or whatever. Anyway, apparently she is a Berklee School of Music educated drummer. Looking at the timeline from what I could see, she would be a recent graduate. And I got to say, she's a really fine player. But I'll talk more about that as we go through this. And we got an album from Amenta here, mostly originals with 1 cover of Duke Ellington's Come Sunday. So the first track here is called Dancing, and this is for his wife, who is apparently a professional dancer. It starts out a very nice syncopated piano and bass intro, and Amenta comes in, and you get a sense right away of his lyrical and melodic playing. He has a really full, warm, nice tone, covers the melody, and you get your first taste of the drumming of Kurkazol here. It's very delicate, snare subdividing, cymbal playing here. This is the kind of drumming I like. Sometimes drummers are heard more than they need to be, but on this recording and this drummer, not so. She's very supportive, but intricate. And I like this kind of drumming. And also a very nice solo after the sax contributed by Cyrus Chestnut. Here sets the mood, gives us a taste of what Amenta's sound is all about. Track 2 is called Home. And looking at his website, this tells us this is impressions of New York street life as his adopted town. I'll get a very nice Chestnut intro. And then here you get a taste of Karotzis bass playing. He has a really nice, deep, woody tone. You know, that kind of bass sound where you can just sort of smell the wood. You can almost taste it in there. On
this album in general, you get the idea that Cyrus Chestnut has ideas to spare. He just keeps coming out with just one brilliant idea after another, and he's right up front. Really amazing. Yeah,
he's always ready to add some incredible ideas, so it starts out with this piano intro, and then the bass adds these nice pulses, and then it turns into an even beat. And Amenta builds a nice solo on here, and then Chestnut adds this really funky, trill-infused solo. He uses trills a lot in his solos, but here they're all over, and then is all this really cascading chords. He has too many ideas, for the limit of the track. But it's really nice. Then we get track 3 is called Bunch of Time. This starts with a long, funky bass intro.
That was cool.
It includes some harmony, some bass power chord kind of things, and some fun intervals. We get a bluesy groove that contrasts with an uplifting section that has more open chords. And then, when the drummer comes in here, other drummers would maybe open up and start smacking away here, but she stays tight in the pocket. She's really got that groove. I really like it. There's a really nice sax solo by Amenta, and then Chestnut comes and he digs deep and funky, and he's adding all these runs and chords, and then with a real deep descent at the end.
And it really accents the chords and the key changes on this track too. It's really cool. Yeah. It really, you're not going to miss any of the key changes in this particular track. He really lets you know they're happening.
Recorded my own jazz album, like I would just like want Cyrus Chestnut to play backing on anything that I could write. He would make it much better than anything I could come up with. Track 4 is number 9, and this is sort of kind of like reminds you of McCoy Tyner. There's a great little bass flurry. We get some really hard swinging rhythm. Amenta comes in. He's got some interesting rhythmic figures as he solos over the changes. Then another like Chestnut solo that's got some really challenging rhythmic kind of figures. He puts in like a really adventurous solo here. What I really like here, again, I keep listening to the drummer here. It's like such a tight hi-hat, and then comes to a drum solo that sort of subtly builds over the bass and piano riff that comes in, under it, and then goes to the end. So this is a nice track. Then we've got a track called 622, so June 22nd. It's a ballad, according to his website, that marks his first date as a leader and also the death of his father, which sounds, happy and sad together. Here in this ballad, they give him a lot of space for him to carry the melody, which he has a nice tone to do. After the sax, the Chestnut has a nice solo, a lot of unique kind of staccato notes and interval play, which is nice. We've got some, again, great reserved drumming on a ballad, just some hi-hat and occasional brushes, and then a kind of bass solo that reaches up into the higher register, a nice classy ballad tune. After that, a tune called Travelers, and this is rather, compared to the others, up-tempo. It's kind of propelled by an ascending bass line and then into a more spacious section and then a descending harmonic pattern. Some nice contrasts in the structure. Amenta makes a graceful solo over the changing rhythms, and Chestnut's solo is kind of agitated and full of exploring rhythms. Number 7 is called Burgundy. This one's kind of fun. There's a drum intro, and this tune starts with a New Orleans kind of beat. And so you get this beat. The form seems to be, I was interested, so I listened to it a few times. You got like 24 bars. The first 16 beats is like an even kind of New Orleans beat. Suddenly you get like 4 bars of hard swinging, and then the last 4 bars of the sort of form goes back to even beat, and then it goes on. So they do this for the melody, and that carries on into Amenta's solo. But by the time it gets to Chestnut's solo, like the swinging is too strong, and so it just swings through that. And then we get a bass solo, some nice drum fills, and back to that beat structure. But it's kind of a fun, just happy tune, and it's got those contrasting rhythms. And finally is Come Sunday, sort of spiritual tune by Duke Ellington. And we get a very impressionistic piano opening by Chestnut, and then Amenta comes in with a rubato melody. And this is where I think he shines the most. His tone, it kind of works on a ballad like this. He gives a subdued but passionate sax solo with nods to sort of an Ellington type styling. There's a short piano solo with graceful runs like Ellington would add. There's sort of short, almost like firework kind of phrases. There's a bass solo that comes back to piano and then back to bass, and a sort of reverential but not historically thinking treatment of this. So it's old and new at the same time. And so that's the album. 8 tracks with a very international cast. What did you think of this one?
I felt that, I liked it a lot. I thought Amenta's, I already talked a lot about Cyrus Chestnut. I thought I didn't say anything about Amenta himself. Francesco Amenta, his playing is very tasteful and, as we would expect from an Italian, very melodic. Okay, we have a lot of this really refined sense of melody, or this heightened sense of melody that we get from Italian players. He has a full tone and a real solid presence. I mean, you're listening to him, despite the fact that I'm being pulled over wanting to hear Cyrus Chestnut all the time. Chestnut really just plays out. He doesn't just he doesn't take a back seat, but nevertheless, Amenta is an upstage. I feel like he's really, his presence is there. I thought the bass player too, he's very active on this recording. He kind of sounds more like a blues bassist a lot of times than a jazz bassist. Like he's really kind of playing these kind of sort of, bass patterns sort of instead of like doing a walking bass or something like that. And I liked it. I thought the record was a really happy record. The recording was fantastic. It was very closely recorded. The sound really had an impact to it. Really just sort of, let you know, how can I say this? Let you know it was there. Yeah, I liked it. It was good. Okay.
Yeah. I thought, I'm trying to get a concept of Amenta, and so he sounds very relaxed and reserved in any setting. So, this is not a tenor
But he's got
player.
this big full tone.
Yeah, it's a full tone, but you're not going to hear any screams or honks in his playing.
It's refined.
It's not in his personality. So he has this reserved sense of playing. Also, his compositions, they're mature and interesting. He's a good composer here. However, I don't know that I've heard enough of his sound character that I could say that his sound is going to be identifiable to me. I haven't heard enough of his personality here. That's the only thing I feel like. I can't really put a finger on what his identifiable, unique sound signature is.
I know what you mean. Like I'm hearing Italian due to the melodic accent, but I'm not really hearing Amenta. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm kind of wondering about that. So we'll see what he comes up with in the future, and what his characteristic is going to be.
No complaints at all. A fine recording, nice original compositions, and shout out to these young Greek players. Yeah, especially
fantastic.
this. I like the bass, but
both were really great.
Gary on drums. I really like a drummer who doesn't just start overpowering things, but knows how to really sit in the pocket and support all the roles here. And having Cyrus Chestnut on your album
never hurts.
That's great. Adds a lot to it. So, Amenta, let's hear what he does next and who he plays with. So, Italy to New York, and I just couldn't resist. After Snorre Kirk, and then we also did another Danish.
We're really into the Danish. I want to say we like Danish composers as well. We have a thing with Denmark, but we're not showing that quite yet. Maybe in jazz we are, but
not in classical yet, but we do.
Not yet, but that's coming.
Danish. And I have a thing with Danish speakers because I have.
Me too. Yeah, that's a thing.
My living room is Dolly, and
the Dolly speakers. Yeah, I like those as well.
Dolly that I can't use in this extra room, but I'm never going to sell them. So, Dolly, give me Dolly.
Yeah, I like those too.
Anyway, I need to know more about the Danish jazz scene and also in general Scandinavian jazz scene, because I think that they've been appreciative of jazz deeply for a long time, and they've developed their own scene. And personally, I haven't explored their own musicians enough. So whenever I get a chance to see something new, I want to check that out. So the next one we're going to explore is some Danish jazz. I guess these would really be the forefront of players through this whole ensemble. But the sax player is Claus Waidtløw, and I believe he's one of the foremost in the Danish jazz scene. And this is his new album called Portraits in Jazz Sunday. And, well...
Is it called Sunday, or is it called Portraits in Jazz
Portraits
Sunday?
in Jazz Sunday. So
okay.
This may be a series, and actually... to sort of look at his style of playing, it might be a little weird to start with this album. So, I've listened to some of his other recordings, and I guess this is sort of a jazz concept album. So you have to understand what they're going for with this album, and what it is and what it isn't. So I'll talk about that a little bit. But anyway, Waidtlow is one of the most esteemed Danish jazz musicians and saxophonists. He's got the Danish Music Award for the most highly respected jazz musicians for many years. Originally he played alto sax, but now he's known for his tenor work and his composition ability, which is really shown on this album. He was born in 1967, so puts him in our general age bracket. He's been active in the Danish music scene since the late 1980s. He's graduated from the Rhythmic Conservatorium in Copenhagen, where he also studied composition with Bob Brookmeyer, the great valve trombonist. So that's a very good teacher-mentor. He's got 8 previous albums as a leader, and he's won a number of awards, including being nominated for the Ben Webster Prize in 1996, the most significant jazz honor in Denmark. He's toured with Carla Bley and Steve Swallow. He's recorded in New York with Christian McBride. Also, he's played in the jazz club Montmartre with Eddie Gomez and one of my favorites, Dave Kikoski. And on this album, he's here with some other great Danish musicians. The pianist, I may not pronounce these names correctly, so please forgive me. Nikolaus Hess, and the piano on this album is really fine. Got on bass Anders Christensen, and drummer Jacob, or is it Jakob Hoyer? And I guess from looking at the descriptions on the Danish jazz scene, these guys are a super group of Danish jazz musicians, and I believe that to be an accurate description. However, this album is with tunes that match a mood, as it's called. Sunday, it's supposed to match a mood of a lazy and quiet Sunday afternoon. And so what we're looking here for is expression in compositions of interplay and sort of communication and tonality. We're not looking for sort of, extreme expressions of what the saxophone or other instruments can do. But this was a really beautiful recording. It took me a few listens to really get it. And they're all original compositions. And once you see what's going on here, it's a very beautiful album. We start out with a track called Stay Around. And when Waidtlow comes in, you get a sense of his airy sound. That sort of Stan Getz breathy type of beauty.
Yeah, I thought Stan Getz right away when I heard the breathy kind of like breathy kind of tone.
Sort of 6/8 ballad, a very relaxed piano solo here, and a really delicate cymbal work in the background. And this he has a great command of touch. He doesn't need to do much while he shows you that his fingers can get all kinds of tones from, just playing a few keys. It's like he's got a few instruments all tied together right there. And then he ends this one with a really breathy ending, and so that sort of sets the mood. Goes on to a track called Clouds, and this is some piano chords that have a wandering bass intro. Then we get some like ascending long tones on the sax that start a tender melody, and you actually feel like you're watching just clouds float over you, and get a nice piano solo.
Very
that starts,
impressionistic track.
It's impressionistic. Piano solo starts over a pedal bass tone, and then you're off to the skies. And what a nice piece. Followed up, track 3 is called Ingrid. I wonder who she is. It's got a mysterious minor piano figure intro, and then a very slow 6/8 kind of pattern with changing moods, and then the sax comes in and it builds over very chiming piano chords. Very, very nice. This is all very subtle things. It may take several listens to get to it. Track 4 is Largo. Get some nice sax and bass work over a minor melody, and then a sudden nice major change to a major key when the piano comes in. It gets a little bit bluesy in the middle and then comes back to major. So there's a lot of sort of tonal changes here, a nice delicate bass solo, and then it's sort of all those major changes sort of make you think there's going to be a happy ending, but no. It sort of goes back to the minor for the ending. And this is a great piece of moods. I really like this one.
All right.
Then number 5 is Melancholia, a great melody that really becomes familiar. As you're listening to it, I was convincing myself, no, he didn't write this. I know this. Somebody wrote this. I've heard this before. This is one of those kind of tunes. It's very relaxed and balanced, so you feel like you'll know it. 6 is called Velvet. This is another 6/8 piece. And the melody is subtly doubled in the sax and piano, just in places, and then it's not. So it's a nice effect. The bass solo comes in, lots of space, and again, another piano solo with this exquisite touch by Hess. This guy really has some kind of super touch in his fingers. Yeah, it's great. And then
I bet he's got classical training.
I'm sure. He really can. Just playing just a few notes differently, he can do so much. And I really like the last 2 tunes on the album. 7 is Strom. It's got that little, I don't know how you.
The O with the slash through.
This O with a slash through it.
I don't actually know how to say that. I don't know how to pronounce it. I should look it up.
Anyway. This has got a mysterious modal melody. It's got a nice sax and piano solos and good support from the rhythm players. It's a really interesting piece. And we end up with a tune called Up in the Sky. And this is a great piece. It starts out with this free rubato melody. The drums come in on the toms, and there's sort of these rolling piano chords, but it doesn't really, get into any meter or anything. And then right about in the middle of the song, it becomes a jazz waltz in a minor key. And it just sort of like starts going on with that, almost like a Van Morrison moon dance or something. And then the piano with a great piano and sax solo. So it goes from like completely impressionistic to, this other mood. So I admit this took me a few listens to get deeper into the whole mood. So you have to be like in the right sort of frame of mind for it. But if you are and see, they're going for a mood discovery. This is not about technique in a flashy sense. This is about discovery of subtle moods and things. But Waidtlow's tone is really subtle. He's got a great sound. This is delicate composing, and the pianist Hess has a great subtle touch. Nothing is flashy here. It's all very much about the intercommunication and subtle interpretation of the small elements that are here. So yeah, great recording.
Yeah, you're talking about the mood, and that I got that too. Even the song titles are sort of evocative of the mood the album is trying to put across. Melancholia, Velvet. It has this kind of late night, mysterious kind of vibe to it, and everything kind of feels a little bit like sort of muffled and sort of even the breathy tone that Waidtlow gets on the saxophone, it is all evocative of that. I'd say this is a great late night listen if you're trying to unwind or something like that. It's a bit. It was intriguing. I liked this. I actually listened to it in the morning too. Which I was like, I should probably play this again at night, but maybe I'll do that sometime.
It's very mood like, It's a late night or a rainy Sunday or sometime you want to be relaxed, but definitely dive into it
after work.
It's a deep. There's a lot.
It's good
going on in a subtle sense here, and his tone is beautiful. The piano playing is so reserved, but you could tell this. I've read some reviews of this pianist Hess's other playing, and he's capable of a lot, but he's only going to let out just what this mood requires here. But what a touch!
Yeah, he's someone I'd like to really hear more of. I really want to know a bit about him. It's kind of, why haven't I ever heard of this guy before? But
when you can hear someone play the same note like 4 times and each one sounds very, very differently, there's something special about his fingers, so you can sense that with this pianist, and that really adds to the ambiance on this recording. So it took me a while to dig into it, but I'm glad I did, and I'm going to check out more Danish jazz whenever I get the chance. Another one that really made me happy to have been introduced to this.
Happy in a sad way. Sad in a happy way.
Sad in a happy way. That's
in a late night kind of, melancholy way. I listened to these in the order that you're actually talking about them now. Amenta, Waidtlow, and then the next one. And it really is kind of like a bright, somber, bright sort of progression. It almost feels like a Baroque concerto or something, in a way, that, as far as sound goes. So the third one, what do we have here?
Well, we're going to end, on a sort of gospel ending, I guess.
I guess. Well, that track, at least.
Yeah, exuberantly. Anyway, this was the one I've been waiting for because I know this player very well. One of the great alto players of our generation, Mr. Vincent Herring.
He's our generation? Or is he older than us?
Oh, he's maybe a couple of years older than us.
Okay.
But not much older. He's not quite 60, I believe. He's in his 50s. And, Mr. Vincent Herring, with his latest release, it's just out on May 7th, just 2 days ago.
On the fantastic sounding Smoke Sessions label.
Yeah, preaching to the choir.
And that's what he does in that track anyway.
And all
he was certainly preaching to the choir on this album because I really like this.
Oh, this is just awesome playing. Been waiting for this for a while. Last I mentioned in our in our Grammy Jazz with the amazing, not in a good way, picks for Grammy Award. Well, somewhat predictable with their little darlings. They always predict, and
they do tend to pick the same artists every year. And not only that, you always know who's going to win too.
Yeah,
not always, usually.
Well, for good sense, but one of the albums from last year that was great, being the 100th anniversary of Charlie Parker's birth. Bird at 100 was a great tribute album that featured Vincent Herring.
That was on the Grammys one?
No, it wasn't. That's why
it should have been. I see. Okay, I understand. I thought did I miss that? I don't know.
No, we talked about it on. I mentioned it as what should have been. Could have been a contender.
Could have been a contender, but it wasn't. Of course, my aging mind forgot about that whole conversation. Herring, but go ahead.
Bobby Watson and what was it? Gary Bartz. three great alto players there playing a tribute, also featuring Dave Kikoski on piano, and the bass player here on this album, hailing from Japan, Yasushi Nakamura.
I noticed that myself.
Yeah, who I guess he went to the U.S. at a young age, age 9 or so. But yeah.
There are a lot of great Japanese players in jazz. We're going to have to highlight a few of them, being that we live in Japan.
And whoa, that's one thing I want to say about this album. He should be highlighted more. Come on, Vincent. No bass solo at all.
There were no bass solos, but Vincent. Yeah,
I'll talk more about that as we go through. But
maybe it's just that he might be an understated player. Japanese people do tend to be understated.
He burns slowly through here. Anyway, great album, as I expected from his past outputs. All of Vincent Herring's releases are great. He's got some great duo, sort of dueling albums with Eric Alexander. Not in a friendly sort of jesting tenor and alto, and they're all great. And all his other recordings are smoke sessions. So I expected this one to be great, but also before I get on to that, also in addition to Cyrus Chestnut on piano and Yasushi Nakamura, you got Jonathan Blake on drums. However, Herring was facing a serious recovering from coronavirus after returning from some gig in Las Vegas this year. And although he recovered from the initial symptoms of the virus, the after effects left him with a serious case of rheumatoid arthritis, which for someone who needs to use their fingers for a living and creativity, had him thinking he may be looking at the end of his career. And while he was trying to overcome that is when he recorded this album, according to the smoke sessions and his own site information. So listening to this, you would never suspect that, because he just sounds brilliant here. But let's hope he has made a full recovery. And so we got a nice mix of types of compositions here, of original, standard, and then interesting covers. So the album starts out, number 1, with Dudley's Dilemma, and this is a Herring original dedicated to the Swiss drummer Joris Dudley. Starts out with a great descending bass groove. It locks in, and then right away you get that burning alto tone that Herring is known for. And his solo, it burns in spots because he's a burning player, but he does hold back a little bit because this is just the first track, but you get a sense that things are going to be inflammable as we go on here.
It's this really sharp-edged tone, really a complete opposite of Claus Waidtløw over here. Is a complete different.
Yeah, he's got that burning tone. And then Chestnut comes in with a solo, and his solo actually matches the title. There's all these sort of rhythmic dilemmas that he introduces. Chestnut is great for playing with rhythms and setting up little kind of equations, and he gets really fed by Blake's drumming. Blake's not really a subtle drummer. He really knows how to feed the fire when it needs to be fed. So we start out here burning, but not too much, because there's more to come. Second track is the well-known standard, Old Devil Moon. And this take of it is really interesting because they don't play it straight. They mix this over the bass line of Benny Golson's classic Killer Joe. Da, 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 and you got the bass line under that. So this is a nice little kind of trick here. Yeah. And this has been done in different things, like Phil Woods did "Willow Weep for Me" over the all blues bass line. So it's a sort of juxtaposition that works really well here. And then off from the break of the head, you get this great alto wail into blazing bluesy solo by Herring. And so, although this is a jazz tune with, great, sort of complex chord changes, Herring can find the blues in all of these sort of harmonic changes with complex runs. And this is what I like about his playing to me. So as any modern player, you can probably sort of pull the link to Cannonball Adderley most closely with that real bluesy feel and intensity. At the same times, I do hear a lot of Phil Woods in his playing with the sort of harmonic structures that he puts into some of his lines. And I know that Phil Woods was one of his early influences, and he played on some tours with him. So I can hear both of those in his playing, but he always maintains his own unique kind of voice. So that's what I like about him. Link to the past with a unique modern voice. Chestnut has a really playful solo here. There's a sort of tumbling ending break before the melody returns, and you get the Killer Joe thing here back in Nakamura's bass. And then Herring burns out at the end with blues licks and wailing, and the tune is over. Again, no bass solo. It takes us
I want to say also, though, Chestnut also just seems to take more of a backseat on this album than he did on Amenta's album. So it may be Herring's presence that's kind of making these players.
He has a huge presence.
He certainly does have a huge presence.
Yeah, that tone is just like the sun rising on the ocean. This goes into track 3, Ojo Ste Rojo. This is a Cedar Walton tune. Cedar Walton, a great jazz pianist, for listeners if you don't know, usually as a sideman to greats like everyone from Lee Morgan and other players. But if you check out his own releases and trio, wonderful pianist, and who Herring had a long association with, several decades, I believe. This one's a fast samba beat with syncopated breaks into the melody. Herring catches fire pretty soon with another passionate solo. Chestnut does some rhythmic magic tricks too here, and it's a fun journey on this tune that obviously Herring knows well because he probably played it many times in association with Walton. And then we're on to what could be in another person's hands. Maybe in the
I know it's going to happen here.
maybe even in the original person's hands, a bit cheesy, cheese whizzy. But we've got Lionel Richie's tune, Hello. Hello, is it me you're looking for? Probably you're not looking for me, but whatever Herring was looking for here, he kind of finds it. In lesser hands, this would not be a good choice, but he gives a really gentle treatment of the melody. They do it right, and Chestnut knows how to just, he can do any jazz thing, but he can also do these really gospel-y and funky kind of backing things. So he does it just right here. And
actually, I want to say this is I didn't like this song until I heard this particular version of it. I just remember this awful, the Lionel Richie version itself was kind of enough, but then there was a video where he was like kind of trying to seduce this
clay sculpting head,
this blind clay sculpting woman.
I remember that.
Oh my God!
I think we played this when I was in junior high. We played this like with stage band, and we had a semi-Nestico version of it or something like that.
It's kind of an amorphous sort of song, and yet he gives it like a kind of solid sort of form, I think, on this particular performance.
Yeah, so it comes out okay.
Herring in this case. I liked this one. He really made this song for me finally. I mean, it's a good song as far as the writing goes, but I think
the melody's good. Yeah.
Lionel Richie's performance was kind of a little kind of blah, I thought, on this, but this was good.
That was in
Herring's hands.
Then we go jumping back in time a little bit. We got Fried Pies, the old Wes Montgomery tune, and this is one of those kind of tunes that it's just set up for fun. So the way the head is structured, you get two 12-bar blues choruses. This sort of sets you up, okay, this is blues. And then you get like 16 bars of modal sort of transition that like build tension, and then you're back into the blues. So you get, this hard swinging and then modal kind of contrast between that builds the tension, which really works in the solos, as it gives the players, these contrasting sections. So you got sax, piano, and drum trading choruses at the end here. Everyone's having a lot of fun on this tune. So, Fried Pies, this is a good one. Into the 6th track, minor swing, a self-descriptive Cyrus Chestnut tune. You got a funky, mysterious ascending bass line that has a contrasting section with syncopated bass, or piano chords rather, but really nice bass playing behind the solos here. You can listen to what Nakamoto's doing here. He's switching things up. He's got like one note, like dung, 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 and then he'll switch to walking, dung, 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 and then like 2-note, boom, ding, dung, ding, kind of figures effortlessly just with whatever the solo is doing. So, he's constantly following the soloist, and especially behind Chestnut's solo, which is really boisterous, and whatever the soloist's mood is, his bass is sort of matching that. And so I was like, oh wow, this guy's really great, but he's really a background player in role, and also sort of delegation on this recording. After this one, we go to In a Sentimental Mood, Duke Ellington tune, of course. Herring plays the melody with a really fat, full sound here. He got lots of nice spaces afforded him in the arrangement. It's a lovely phrase solo over, and here the drummer lays back a bit more than other places, so sparse drumming. You got some nice little sparse tickling by Chestnut that fits, Ellington's style on a tune like this, which is nice. Then we've got the title track, an original by Herring called Preaching to the Choir. This has got a gospel-y groove, and Herring mixes up bluesy phrases, some blazing runs, and then some, outside of the chord harmonic runs in a really charged up solo.
Upbeat, immediately appealing track. I like this a lot.
Chestnut does a funky and far out balance. He's sort of like intergalactic and terrestrial at the same time. And then he comes up with this sort of left-hand chords of doom that are like, sort of like, Armageddon there. I don't know where he found those sounds, but, they're kind of all fun. Track 9 is Granted. It's a Joe Henderson tune. It's got a sparse piano chord opening, get a minor melody into a Herring solo. It builds the tension with drums. The piano keeps pressing him harder and harder. And then Chestnut comes in with a rolling interlude, and he's got a real rambunctious solo with more thundering left-hand sort of things that he does. And then they trade fours, sax and drums through this. If you know the original of this Joe Henderson one, it's a nice cover of this. And the album ends on a positive light with another standard pop tune from Stevie Wonder, You Are the Sunshine of My Life.
And this is another amazing kind of workout for this very, very popular and well-known song. They did a lot of interesting things with it.
Yeah, so it comes in with this light and lilting intro by Chestnut, and what I thought, he does the same thing on the intro as at the start of his solo. He's like really getting fifth dimensional. You can almost be up and away like, in your beautiful balloon here,
I thought that was what you were talking about.
Light and lilting, and then Marilyn McGoose sits on my lap and whatever. I should probably...
And you give her a Renaissance workout. Is that what you...
whatever. Anyway, this is it's got that sort of 70s, new harmonic approach to pop tunes with it. But then they give it a bossa beat with a happy melody. So it could be a bit cheesy, but Herring rips out with a solo, and this is where he reminds me of like Phil Woods, because Phil Woods would take on these kind of style tunes like this, but he would keep them really rooted, like seriously in the jazz vein, and so Herring does that, and so I this is where I thought this is what Phil Woods would do, and actually on a phrase, the beginning of Willow Weep for Me, he uses that twice in here. It's not like he quotes it or something, but it just becomes part of two phrases. And so I thought, it just reminded me of a lot of different things. And then, Chestnut sets this a bit, fifth dimensional thing at the beginning and then at the start of his solo, but he sort of, abandons sort of, too much 70s, and he really pounds it out for a climax on this solo. Then it comes back to the melody. It repeats over the last phrase with drum soloing that continues after the sax drops out, and then the rhythm players close it out. So this is probably the coolest version you could do of Sunshine of My Life.
It was great. There's some great soloing on it too. I really it picked me up.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what Herring wanted to have was a really positive ending to this album after, what musicians have been through, and he personally has been through, through the coronavirus and lockdowns and all of this kind of thing. So, this tune will really make you feel happy. And
great soloing too, like the extended version of it. There's a lot of it's a really good song. Basically, it's a really good song to solo over as well.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder could write really good pop tunes, good harmonies, good melodies, and everything works together. And so basically, what you've got here, is Herring showing you why he's one of the top alto sax players of the day. You hear the past greats in his playing. As I said, you can hear Cannonball Adderley in there. You can hear the amazing, technical kind of runs that Phil Woods put in there. But he's his own man. He's got his own things here, and especially he's adept at both, turning on a burning intensity. Take your torch and, what do you want to burn? He's going to just burn it up. It doesn't matter what kind of tune it is or what the complexity of it is. He's going to incinerate it with his
tone, not necessarily with his technique. Really, he's more of he's got a big tone.
Yeah, I think he's got both.
A huge presence. Well, he's got both, but I mean, it's mainly with his tone on this album, I would say.
Yeah, tone, his technique. He can do all the things, but if you need tender, he can turn that on too, and he can treat something
sentimental mood
when it's called for, with reverence. So, I think, to me, I like, there's a lot of, players. I think in order to be at this level, it takes some degree of maturity. So, he's in his 50s later, probably mid 50s now. So to
maybe
get this
like us then.
Yeah, to get this gravitas, this takes a journey. There are some, younger players who are really great and things, but to have all of these sort of a judgment when it comes to what tune I'm going to use what on and how I'm going to interpret it and where I'm going to step on the gas and where I'm going to coast. You sort of need that sort of rear view mirror view of life and musical thing, and he's got that here. So he gets my extreme respect for this. He's got a nice ensemble. Again, when you've got Cyrus Chestnut on board, that's some gravitas there. And he's a big man, and he is big on expression with surprises too. Boy, this guy can just take some solo and add all these kind of interesting elements into it and turn it around and tip it inside out. Yeah, this guy's
great stuff.
Amazing pianist.
Yeah, he was good. Like I said though, on this album, he takes a bit more of a backseat. It's like he knows who he's playing with.
He's a little bit behind there, but still.
Even so, 3 jazz albums, 3 completely different sounds. on the saxophone. It was a really interesting week, I'd say.
But what I want to say is, too, on this album, Nakamura, come on.
Yeah,
we need a bass solo.
don't be shy.
We need one bass solo on here at least, what a great supporting role on this and other albums I've, heard him playing on. He really should, really want to hear more of what he can do. But, hey, he's, one of the in-pocket players in the New York scene, so I'm sure he's just doing the Japanese thing and being kind of, happy to be in that scene. But listening to what he does behind other players makes me just want to hear more of him on his own.
Okay, and maybe we will in the future. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, and there we are.
So we've got a full sax life, which is always, good to have.
It's always good to have a good sax life.
I don't like to be sexually abstinent.
No, absolutely not. We weren't that this week.
No, not this week. And we were going.
We were sexually fulfilled.
We were sexually fulfilled. We had a Renaissance awakening.
Yes, we did.
And then we jumped right into being romantic. We skipped over all that Baroque and classical stuff, and we were on
that's coming up in the future. No worries.
Oh yeah, we
coming
can skip
soon.
eras and things at will because we are mature and in charge here. So we've got some interesting things coming up in the future. Just as a reminder, if you enjoyed the podcast, you stayed with us till here. Please.
That really took some doing because this was a long.
It's a long one. Yeah, we're here at 2 hours.
Yeah, we were rambling along today.
Please do take just a moment, give us a ranking, a review, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Shoot us an email at adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you.
And remember, il grillo è un buon cantore.